chatting away. I've been chatting away to everybody as we've been sitting and waiting for people to join. Those of you who don't know me, my name is Jo Sharland. I'm the tour director of the Great Waterfront Trail Adventure. And those of you who do know me, hello again. I'm not going to say very much on this meeting because I want to turn it directly over to David Meyer, who's our Director of Trails here at the Waterfront Regeneration Trust. He has been working very hard, in spite of a little bit of illness over the last week, on creating maps and ride with GPS itineraries for everybody to use when we are on the GWTA. So I'm not going to say very much more, but would like to introduce you to David. In my screen is over in the bottom right hand corner. He's sitting in there he is waving. So take it away, David.
Okay, well, before we get started on the Ride with GPS content, I suppose I will just maybe share quickly with you just an example of the types of maps that we'll be looking at. So it's not going to be, for any of you who have been with us on the tour before, it's really going to be a lot of the same kind of stuff. We do have our own Great Lakes Waterfront Trail maps that we have been have released to the public year over year, and we have, we are going to be making use of those as resources where possible. But we do have a few, where we're on a new trail segment, similar to what we did on, well, actually not quite similar to what we did on the Simcoe County Loop Trail, because we did use Loop Trail maps last year. But we have created some additional mapping where need be. So let me just open that up, and I'll share my screen really quick, and then we'll we'll turn it right over to Dylan so that we can talk about the Ride with GPS component, because I'm sure that's what you all really want to find out more about. So you should be able to see my screen here. These are the day 3 maps that I was just working on today. Can everybody see my screen? Right.
Mm-hmm.
So what you see here is our annotated map sets. They do have quite a bit of the detail that you will see on the itineraries as well. They are meant to be complementary to the itineraries and not to be used in exclusion to them. So the information here, you'll find more of it on the itineraries. Similar with the Ride with GPS, I've tried to copy some of the information from the itineraries into the Ride with GPS data. So those of you that are going to be using Ride with GPS will have a lot of those points of interest. Will be most of them, but most of the detail will still be housed within the itinerary. So they're all kind of meant to be used in complement to one another. So what you see here, this is really just one of our pre-existing maps of Kingston. You can see it's noted up with some information on breakfast, on places where people can stay. The previous day's information includes a little bit more detail as well, on like how to get between the final days, kind of the base camp area, and where another supported hotel might be. So all the routing that we've created, because we have to, we didn't want to create, say, like 8 different routes for one day, or for one day. We do have multiple days where there are more than one option to ride, whether it's following the Great Lakes Waterfront Trail or the Millennium Trail, or in this case, when you're going from Kingston, you can go north along the KMP Trail, in which case I've put a little KMP blaze here, so you'll be following KMP blazes there. But you'd have the option of going to the KMP Trail or down to the unsigned Wolf Island Loop. So there are multiple options. What I'm getting at is, with Ride with GPS, so far as I know, Dylan, and feel free to blow me away if I'm wrong, but we can only route to one location, and I can't create like alternates within one route. So rather than create numerous different routes going to base camp and to one supported overnight or another supported overnight for both different trips, we've created one route and Ride with GPS that goes to the GWTA base camp, and those are where the campers are staying, or in this case in Kingston at David Brandt Hall, or David Brandt House. Sorry. So there will be a little bit of information and routing on these maps to get you to your overnights if you're not staying at the camp. If you're staying at one of the overnights, we will mark up the maps with additional routing to get you where you need to go. And I think that's kind of the big piece of mapping this year, is that we do have a lot of different routes. We have, 2 options on day 2, we have 2 options on day 3, and 2 options on the well, I guess technically the second to last day, whether you go on the Cheesing Frankers loop or to the Quebec border. So 3 days with 2 different options. It's a lot of different options. And so there are some adjustments within the mapping. I will be on site, obviously, when we're doing the tour, and you are welcome to pick my brain about maps or about the route whenever you need to. And all that say, like the details will be there when you need them. We'll be there to support you, and the Ride with GPS information, which I'm sure you all want to get onto, will be there to kind of guide you on the way, whether you're online or offline, which I'm sure Dylan will get into. And it's really been a great tool for us as we begin using it more heavily over the last. So Dylan, Dylan's here from Ride with GPS. I guess he hasn't been technically introduced, but please thank you for, I guess thank you first for joining us today and for doing the seminar for our participants. Ride with GPS has been like I said, we've used it a lot more heavily over the last year. We had tons in the seminar last year, a lot of great feedback about the app and its use, in the GWTA last year. And thank you for your support, Dylan.
Oh yeah, no problem at all. Thanks so much for having me. I'm very happy to be able to speak to everybody. And also, just so that you know, all of the information you presented in terms of Ride with GPS is correct. I have no addendums or additional information to add on top of what you've already said there. So I think the first thing that is probably most useful to hop in on and chat about is getting everybody RSVP'd to this event, basically so that you're able to access the event in the app and on the website, see all the routes, use that for navigation, that sort of thing. So the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the chat here, and I'm going to drop the auto approval link for the event itself. And again, this is the event is sort of the container for all of the routes associated with this event or tour or rides. So everybody who's going to be participating will want to RSVP to this. Let me pull this chat up right now, and I'll drop that link in there. Okay.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, perfect. So yeah, just open that chat up, and I dropped in the auto approval link. A couple things to talk about in terms of the auto approval link. I imagine probably many of the people sitting in this call right now have an existing Ride with GPS account. If you don't, that's totally fine. When you click that auto approval link, what's going to happen is you're going to be prompted to create a Ride with GPS account if you do not already have one. If you do have a Ride with GPS account and you are not logged into it, it'll prompt you to log in. Once you log in and hit that auto approval link, you'll be automatically RSVP'd to the event, which means that the event itself will be listed in the app and on the website, giving you quick and easy access to it in both platforms. So what I'm going to do now is share my computer screen over with y'all and give you just a really quick demo of what you can expect when clicking that auto approval link. And then we can talk a little bit about actually locating that event in the app itself and navigation, all that fun stuff. Give me 1 second here while I get my screen sharing moving.
Do you want us to approve that now, Dylan, or?
Yeah, so if anybody here has not already RSVP'd to the event, I would highly recommend that you click that auto approval link right now and kind of move along here with me. I'll give you just a couple of minutes to get that all squared away and ready to go, and then I'll jump into the next thing here.
And and it's Joe here, sorry, I would say I have just done it, and it's very, very simple.
Yeah, it's super easy. Really the big thing to just keep in mind is if you don't have a Ride with GPS account, all you need to do is go through and create it before you hit that RSVP link. If you hit that RSVP link before you've created one, you'll just be prompted to make one from that point forward. So what we're looking at right now on my screen that I'm sharing over here is sort of the default landing page of your account on the website. Prior to our meeting today, I went ahead and logged in just to be able to be ready to give you a quick little preview of how this looks. What I'm going to do right now is click that auto approval link. Oops. Let me actually stop my share for a quick second and then share it back over. All right. So I've just hit that auto approval link. And as you can see here, it says, congrats, you are RSVP'd. And from the website here, I'm going to continue, click the button that says continue to event. And here you can see that we have a preview of the event itself. All of the guide information that's been, wonderfully curated is listed in here. So if you need additional information or want to just reference additional information about the event itself, this is the container at which you will see all of that info. On the right side of the screen, you can see here that it's probably the first route in the package of routes that are listed here that's shown to you in this little map. If you scroll down a tiny bit, you can see all of the routes that are associated with this event. If you're interested in seeing additional information about any specific route, if you click on the title, that the route structure in general we pulled up here. It gives you a little preview of the elevation profile. It also gives you just a little bit of data in terms of how long it's going to be, how many feet of elevation, and how many feet of elevation loss they're going to be, or sorry, elevation gain and elevation loss. From here, if you want to learn more information about one of these specific routes, you can see now that this route is highlighted in green. If I click go to route, I'm taking to the route preview. We call this the route show page, where you can get even more information about what's going on here. The same information on the elevation profile is still shown here. You'll see some metrics associated with it in terms of how long it's going to be. That guide information is also listed there. And if you scroll down a little bit, you can see information like the cue sheet, just in case you want to preview all of that information. One thing that I wanted to briefly touch on while we are viewing this specific route here on the website, some people find this useful, but if you want to print out a map and cue sheet for the route so you can have this along with you when you're actually out there navigating, you can do this quickly and easily by clicking the More button in the upper left-hand corner of the screen. This presents a drop-down menu, and from this drop-down menu, you have the option to print map and cue PDF. When you select that, you'll be taken to the print preview screen. These are all of the printing options that you have. I would honestly suggest not messing around with this too much, just because the people who've gone in and created these routes have set the printing to default to the way that it is here. So if you want to see things as they were planned, just scroll down to the bottom of the screen, hit submit. And this is going to download a printable PDF and cue sheet that you can print off at your leisure. Let me actually head back here, and I'm going to head back to the event. Okay, so let me stop my share really quickly. I wanted to briefly ask, sometimes there can be a little bit of confusion. It looks like we have a question in the chat here. I'm not really sure what's being asked in that little question box in there, but if the question doesn't get addressed as we continue to go through this, feel free to speak up or raise your hand and I'll be happy to address it. But the next thing that I want to do is just quickly ask, is anybody having any trouble RSVPing to the event?
No.
So Sally, can you put your email address in the chat for me, please? This will allow me to find your account and then quickly and easily RSVP you right here. You don't need to end up doing it yourself.
Hang on a sec.
Yep. Dylan, I have Sally's email address. Why don't I email her the RSVP?
Okay, part of the reason I was asking for this is just in case there is any issue, I can go into Sally's account and RSVP for them. But if anybody has trouble RSVPing past today, they can always shoot me an email and I'll be happy to get them set up on the back end here.
Marlene or Joe, I'm using a different email for this. That's the only problem.
Oh,
Yeah, sorry.
okay.
That's okay. So hey, I know there's a lot of chatter going on in the chat right now about, like some other items in terms of like Wahoo or external GPS device syncing. That's not something that I'm going to directly touch on during the meeting itself. But I will show you how to export routes as files from the website in case you do need to sync them over. But basically, I'll show you how to view the event in its entirety on the website, which if you have syncing enabled with your Wahoo device will allow you to send routes back and forth here. Okay. So Sally, I'm going to get Sally set up real fast, and then we'll move on to the app here. All right, Sally, I got you RSVP'd. Okay. Let me minimize my screen. I'm going to share my phone screen over, and we'll all go through this together and make sure that we know how to navigate the app, find the event in the app, and then access the routes that are included there. Give me 1 second. I'm going to share my screen over. Okay. Can I get a thumbs up if everybody sees my phone screen that's being shared over here? Awesome. Great. Okay. So for some of you, if you've participated in events with the Ride with GPS app in the past, if you'll see here, I have this little slider up at the top of my screen, and in that slider is a little button that says Events. If you have that present on your homepage, you can tap that, and you'll see the Great Waterfront Trail Adventure listed at the very top. But there is another way that you can find this event, just in case you don't see that handy little event button up top. From the home screen, if you look at the very bottom of the screen, there is a More button in the lower right-hand corner. If you tap More, you will see an option third down from the top that says My Events. And if you tap that, that's going to take you to the event page that will show you any event that you have RSVP'd to, whether it's in the past or whether it's something coming up in the future. The next thing that we're going to want to do, now that we see the Great Waterfront Trail listed in our events, is tap the Great Waterfront Trail Adventure. And that is going to show you the event sort of in full, or the event preview in full view in your app version, or in your app here. If you scroll down slightly, so as you can see here, we have all of that wonderfully curated guide information that you can read through if you want to learn additional information. If we scroll down a little bit further, you're going to see all the routes that are listed and contained within this event, and these are all of the routes that you might actually be interested in using. From this page, one very, very helpful thing I want to call out, and we'll sort of get into the very meaty parts of why you might want to do this and what downloading for offline actually means. But in the very upper right-hand corner of the screen, you're going to notice that there's a 3 vertical dot menu. And if you tap that 3 vertical dot menu up top, you'll see that there's a couple different options in this menu that comes up. The one at the very, very top is Download All. And what that's going to do when you tap it is it's going to download every single route that's included in this event to your phone for offline use. So, and before I explain what downloading the routes for offline use on your phone actually does, you also have the option to download individual routes for offline use if needed. As I scroll down here, from the sort of event list or the event route list, there's that same 3 vertical dot menu to the right of it. And if I tap that, I have the option to download it. And when I download it, that will be taken to my phone, stuck there for offline use. So the most important question here, let me stop my share for a quick second. What is an offline route, and why would it be important for you? Why might you want to download a route for offline use on your phone? So there's 2 reasons why. The first is when you download a route for offline use, what we are essentially doing is taking that route, the route line, and some of the surrounding map tiles, basically enough for you to get lost and find your way back to the route. And we're taking it and we're sticking it on your phone and storing it locally. This is a great option because what it does is it ensures that regardless of your connection to a cell network or Wi-Fi, regardless of your connection to the outside world, if you've downloaded a route for offline use, you will be able to access navigation for it. You'll get turn-by-turn voice instruction. You'll be able to see the route and your location on that route in real time, regardless of whether you are connected to a cell network or Wi-Fi. So that's the first benefit. The second benefit is if you've downloaded a route for offline use on your phone, you can put your phone in airplane mode and still access navigation, turn-by-turn directions, see your location along the route, all that stuff. And the reason you might want to do that is because when you have an offline route and you put your phone in airplane mode, it's preventing your phone from attempting to reach out to connect to a cell network or Wi-Fi, which drastically extends the battery life of your phone while using our app. And if I can give you a little anecdote, which I share with everybody, I mentioned this too, I do quite a bit of bike packing. So things where I sort of load up my bike full of all my camping gear and head into the woods for a couple of days. If I download a route for offline use and navigate it with my phone in airplane mode, I can usually get about 15 hours of recording on a single battery charge. So if battery is something that you're a little concerned about, worried about, this is definitely a feature. Like offline routes and navigating them in airplane mode will really make a big difference in terms of how much battery is getting used up while you're actually using our app to navigate. All right, let me get my phone open back up here and we'll talk about a couple of other things. Okay. Awesome. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to sort of just give you a quick little example of how things sort of look when you hit that download all button or when you download a route in general, and then how you can find it in your app outside of the event itself. So right now I'm going to tap download all. And when you tap download all, what's going to happen is you're going to be taken straight to the offline tab of your mobile route library. And as you can see on my screen, each one of the routes that are included within this event are currently downloading for offline use. This can take a little bit of time, especially, it's dependent on internet connection, and it may take a little bit of time to download the entire routes package. But assuming that you're connected to Wi-Fi and things are functioning as you'd expect, it'll take a couple of minutes to finish downloading here. Keeping your screen on and having the Ride with GPS open is usually the best way to ensure that everything is downloading, accordingly and continues to download. But let's say that you close the app at some point, or you're done downloading everything for the day. You're going to go focus on something else for a little bit, and you open up the app the next day, and you're like, all right, where do I find these routes I've downloaded for offline use? So just to quickly recap, from the home screen, you'll probably see this handy dandy events button, which you can tap. That takes you to the event. And from here, you can view all of these routes that are associated with it. The other way is, since we've downloaded the routes that we're interested in using for offline use, at the very bottom of the screen, there is a button that says Library. And if you tap that button, you're taken to your route library. And I'll go into some of this a little bit more in a minute, but if you look at the very top of the screen, you'll see that there are 4 different tabs listed. One says Rides, and Rides are just the recordings of your activities. Routes, you're typically going to see in your Routes tab routes that you have personally planned. You may also see these event routes listed in there if you've downloaded them for offline use. Pinned, I won't talk about pinned too much just because it's not super important for the event that's going to be going on here. And then you have your offline tab. And if you tap your offline tab, that's where all of the routes associated with this event are going to be listed. So the next thing I want to talk about is when you're actually, let's say it's the day of, you're getting ready to ride the route, but you want to start navigation on your phone. So when you head to your offline tab and find the route that you want to navigate, you'll tap to see it in full view. And this will pull up a quick preview of that route. And as we're looking here, if you look in the lower left-hand corner of my screen, you can see that there's a nice orange navigate button. And when you're actually ready to start riding, you tap that navigate button and you'll be taken to a ride screen. I'll show you this in a second. You'll be taken to a ride screen. You're going to see your location along the route line, and you'll start getting turn-by-turn directions from that point forward. One other thing that is sort of a useful little feature, I'm assuming people feel relatively comfortable getting to the start of some of these routes, but let's say you've never been to this place before, and let's say you've never been to the starts of these routes, and you want to get some driving directions to the start. While we're viewing the route in the sort of screen that I have up here, in the upper right-hand corner of the screen, there is that 3-dot vertical menu that we've seen before on other screens. If we tap that, there's a little option that says directions to start. When you tap that button, when you tap that option, directions to start, it's going to open up the default mapping app on your phone. For people who are iOS or iPhone users, it's going to open up Apple Maps. For Android users, it's going to open up Google Maps, and it's going to default to giving you driving directions to the start point of your route. So it's a really nice, handy way to, if you're familiar with using either of those mapping services, it's a very easy way to get quick, easy, concise directions to the start of your route without having to pull out, another GPS device or something like that. Okay. So now what I want to do, for those of you who have not navigated a route in Ride with GPS before, I want to give you just an example of what navigation looks like so you have a better idea of what you can expect when you're actually out there getting ready to start riding. So I'm going to tap that Routes tab here, and I'm going to find a route. I would use one of the event routes included in this, but I am nowhere near the start of any of these. So to give you the best example of what navigation looks like, I'm going to choose a route that I created that's relatively close to my starting location, which is this one right here. So pretend that I am one of you. I'm at the start of one of these routes and I'm ready to get rolling. If I look in the lower left-hand corner of the screen, there's that navigate button. And when I tap navigate, here's what happens. As you can see right now, there's a little red GPS signal weak signal sign. It can take up to 30 seconds for your phone to get a solid lock on your GPS location. Once we get a solid lock on that GPS location, that red banner, as you can see here, will disappear, and the app is going to default to being auto-paused. What I'll say really quickly about the auto-pause feature is actually really nice. If our app detects that you are moving slower than, I think it's about 2.5 miles per hour, the recording is automatically going to pause and pick back up once you start moving again. This is nice and handy because it makes the metrics associated with your ride recording a little bit more accurate. We'll be able to easily figure out your moving time versus your stop time and factor all of that in accordingly when we generate ride metrics after everything is saved. But a couple of things to call out as we're looking at this map here. The first thing is, can everybody see that little blue dot sitting on that route line? Sort of in the middle of the screen, right underneath where that little green start icon is. That blue dot there is my current location. That blue line is the route line that we're going to follow. If you look at the top of my screen, you can see that there is a little dialog box that's displaying what my first cue is, or my first direction. Right now, I'm obviously sitting in my office, so I can't show you what this looks like as I'm actually moving around. But if I were riding this route right now, once I reach that first cue, the next cue is going to populate, so I know what my next turn is going to be. Simultaneously, in addition to showing you the cues over the top of your screen, we're also going to verbally announce them to you. So if you have your phone's audio turned all the way up, or if you have maybe a Bluetooth headphone connected, you're going to hear these you're going to hear these cues announced to you as you are actually riding in real time. So all that's to say is some people don't like having their phone sitting in front of them or mounted to their handlebars during a bike ride. I totally understand that. Sometimes if I go for a bike ride, the last thing I want to do is have a screen in front of me. Paying attention to those verbal cues or those verbal cue announcements is a great alternative to having your phone sitting out in front of you as you go. So one more thing to sort of say about this, as I zoom out a little bit, I can see the route line in its entirety. That little red dot at the very end of this route is where it actually ends. I need to zoom in here. Now, other than the cues, one thing I will say about the route line itself is the section of the route that you have not covered, that you have not ridden yet, will always appear as blue ahead of you. Once you actually ride over the route, it will appear as red behind you. This is a really great, helpful, and easy way for you to see where you are along the route. And if something happens and you need to head back to the start, you'll be able to see where you came from and can therefore just turn around and follow that all the way back to the starting location if need be. One thing I'll also mention, if you head off course during navigation, where you're seeing that queue listed at the top of the screen, instead of showing you the next queue that's going to happen, it's going to give you an off course warning. It'll say off course at the very top of the screen, letting you know that you've headed off of the planned route itself. When you see those off course alerts, it's going to give you an option to route back to course. You'll see this listed on the queue itself. And if you tap route back to course, our app will give you directions back to the nearest point of the route that you were navigating. If you are in offline mode or in airplane mode during navigation, instead of giving you directions back to the nearest point of your route, we're going to give you a direction and heading back to the nearest point of your route. So it'll say, like, you know, head northeast for 500 feet and you'll return back to your route. Once you head back onto your route, navigation will pick up from that point forward. At the very bottom of the screen, you can see that there are a couple of metrics listed here. You know, I have a few on here that say like distance, distance left, duration, ETA. There are 2 pages of available metrics. If I swipe at the bottom to the right, that reveals the second page here. I won't go too deep into this, but if metrics are something that are important to you, you can actually customize which metrics are shown to you on the screen. You can do that by long pressing any of the metrics that are currently listed there. And that's going to pull up this whole list of all of the available metrics that you can choose from in the Ride with GPS app. You know, ones that I sort of always find to be very helpful are distance, speed. I personally don't care too much about average speed. For me, myself, that's more of something that makes me, you know, feel a little discouraged because I'm a pretty slow rider. But some people really like that. Just letting you know that there's a million different metrics that you can turn on depending on what your personal preference is. The next thing, and this is sort of another one of those really useful features that I showed to people and then always sort of recommend using sparingly, because again, when you see how much further you have to go, it's really helpful to know how much further you have to go, but it can also be like, well, I have quite a bit of climbing left, like I might not want to look at that quite yet. But if you look at the bottom of my screen here, there is a little button that says elevation. When I tap that, that pulls up the elevation profile for the route. If you look kind of in the upper right-hand corner of that elevation profile, you'll see that there's a little up arrow. If I tap that, it makes the elevation profile screen just a little bit bigger and a little bit more clear. You'll also notice that in the far left-hand corner here, there's a little blue dot, which is my current location in relation to the rest of the route. As you're actually riding, your location is going to be updated. You'll actually see it moving along the elevation profile. If you now tap the elevation profile, that reveals this little elevation scrubber, which is really useful if you're sort of curious how many miles to the top of this peak you have left to go, how much more distance you have. So right now I'm sitting at the very beginning of this route, so I know that I have about 1.7 miles until I've reached the very, very top of that first climb. So it's another really useful feature you can use during navigation to get a better sense of how much hard work you have left to go, or how much downhill you have coming up pretty soon. One other thing I wanted to point out here, so if you want to see the cue sheet, there's a little cue sheet button, and you can tap that. That'll list the full cue sheet for the route. This is something that I don't necessarily think everybody will need to be using in real time. Just want to let you know that it's there in case you do want to preview some of the cues. The tools option in the very lower right-hand corner on the far end. This is useful because if you tap tools and then go to settings, there's a couple things on this page that are worth calling out. The first one is where it says navigation, third down from the top. If you tap navigation, you're going to see all of the navigation alerts that you currently have enabled on your phone, or sorry, in your app. I have all of mine turned off a lot of the times, but I bring this up because there's a lot of announcement content that will happen during navigation. Some of it you might find useful and helpful to hear or see. Some of it you might not want to hear. For example, I have very bad hearing. As a result, the verbal cues aren't very helpful for me personally, so I'll typically turn those off. So you'll know things are turned on when the toggle is orange. You can turn them off by just tapping that toggle, and when they turn gray, those are disabled. Everybody has their own personal preference for which alerts they want to have enabled. All of this will make more sense as you actually go through and start riding. You'll know which announcement content you want versus which ones you don't. Tapping tool and then navigation is where you'll find the options to turn those on or off depending on what you need. Let me hit that back button.
This is Michelle here. I've got a quick question since you're on this page. Are any of those alerts, like if you have like a Garmin watch or an Apple Watch, you know how sometimes if a notification pops up, then your watch will buzz. Will any of these cause your watch to buzz just so that you get to a point where, hey, there's something you should pay attention to here?
No, so that's a great question. All of the like the navigation settings that I'm showing you here are specific to the Ride with GPS app. Your Garmin device, whether that's a watch or Garmin unit, has its own set of notifications and uses them in its own proprietary way. So yeah, if you're using the app, like the Ride with GPS app for navigation, you can go in here and edit those navigation settings. But if there's announcement content on your Garmin that's bothering you, that's something that would need to be handled in the Garmin settings.
Mark and me are more tech savvy than me, so it could be interesting. We'll be okay. They have maps I can print out too, so I might use some of that.
Right, so the next thing I wanted to call out, which is another very useful feature, is handlebar mode. This might be listed slightly different depending on which devices are being used versus like iOS versus Android. But what handlebar mode does, we tap handlebar mode. If I toggle on screen always on, what that does is make sure that my Ride with GPS app will always stay on while I am using, while I'm like navigating or using the app. So if, for example, if I back out of here and I want to make sure that my phone screen stays on the entirety of the time that I'm navigating so I can see the map, so I can see my location, handlebar mode is a great way to make sure that that is turned on so that your screen stays on. One cool thing about handlebar mode is if you have handlebar mode enabled, screen always on, you can manually turn your screen off. And what will happen during navigation is the lock screen will turn on just to display the next cue, and then will turn off afterwards. This is a really nice feature if you are planning, like if you want to continue to get turn-by-turn updates and not miss a turn, but you want to conserve the amount of battery power that's being used while you're using Ride with GPS. Like a general rule of thumb is the biggest drain on your phone's battery while doing anything on your phone is going to be the phone screen being turned on. So if you have handlebar mode turned on and you want to keep your screen on at all times, make sure to make your screen as dim as you can while still being able to see everything. That will just make sure that we're not, completely killing your battery while you're using everything. Okay, so one thing I wanted to call out here, during navigation, whenever you navigate a route in Ride with GPS, we are simultaneously recording your activity. We're recording a ride as you actually move through here. So what's really important, especially given that there are multiple different routes and multiple different days in which you'll be riding, you're going to want to make sure that you finish and save your recordings at the end of each day. If, for example, just as an example, if I left my ride recording going for 5 days at a time, you'd start to experience some really strange app behavior just because the amount of memory our app is using, because we have this constant running recording, is pretty big. It's pretty heavy. So for the best performance from our app and the best experience while navigating, you're going to want to end those recordings at the end of each day. How you'll do that, if you look at the bottom middle of my screen, there is a big white circle with a pause icon sitting in the middle. So that's how we're ultimately going to end our recording. And how we'll do that is by long pressing that pause button. And as you can see here, we get two options. We can either resume ride or we can finish ride. If I tap finish ride, I'm taken to our save form, which will allow me to input a title. I can give it a description. One thing that's actually really cool to call out here is if you take photos with your phone during a ride recording, you can tap that add photos button and attach them to the ride. The reason this is cool is because we will geotag those photos in the location that they were taken. So if you like look at your ride recording after you've done all this cool stuff, you'll be able to actually see a little photo icon where you've taken each one of those photographs, which is kind of a nice fun little thing to do. So if I scroll down just a little bit more, that reveals that delete option. If you don't care about saving your ride recordings, you can just delete it. That's totally fine. But if you tap save, that will sync your activity recording to your Ride with GPS account where you can view it later on. And just to sort of recap here, that back button. If I go to my library option, at the very top of the screen, if I tap the Rides tab, that is going to be, this is a record of all of my activity. So if, for example, this is a ride I just did over the weekend, if I tap that to see it in full view, I will see the actual map showing where I went. And then I'll also see all of those associated metrics with it as well. You can actually pull up this little gray bar to expand the metrics screen so you can get even more detail about what you did and where you went. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing my phone screen, and then I'm going to head back to the website briefly, just to show you where you can locate events on the website, just in case you want to preview it from there instead of through your phone. Give me one moment and I will pull this up. Okay, so right now we're looking at the default homepage of my Ride with GPS account. If I scroll down just a tiny bit, so right now we're sort of looking at all of my recent activities, so my rides and routes, and if you follow anybody, you'll see them listed over here in your feed. But most importantly, if we scroll down a little bit, there's this little events field, and as you can see here at the very, very top of my screen, there is the Great Waterfront Trail Adventure. If I click that,
It's down, Pickles.
I can see the event in full view, which is, again, something that we took a look at earlier. One other place that you can find it. So by the way, just to let you know, a little quick way to return to your home screen is this little Ride with GPS icon in the upper left-hand corner of the screen. So events are going to be listed over here, but they're also listed under the calendar option on the left side. So if I click where it says calendar and I scroll down, I can see the Great Waterfront Trail Adventure listed right up at the very top. One last thing I wanted to touch on is some people probably use a Garmin or Wahoo. We talked about this very, very briefly a little bit ago, but if you want to get one of these routes to a Garmin device or external GPS device, if you click Go to Route to see the route in full view, if you click More at the top of the screen, top left, you have the option to export as file. And for a lot of folks, export as file is ultimately how you'll get the route and manually sync it from your computer to your GPS device. So if I export as file, you have a whole bunch of different file types to choose from. I won't go into detail in terms of, which one is which and which one you might want over another. What I will say is, generally speaking, nearly all GPS devices, external GPS devices, will take a TCX course file. So if you click TCX course and then download TCX file, that will download the route file to your computer. And from here, you can move that over to your GPS device if needed. Alrighty, so let me stop my share here. And what I want to do is open it up to questions. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask those now. I also want to make sure to go back to the chat and touch on anything that was brought up that I didn't see while I was presenting. All right, so let's take a look through this chat here and I'll see if I can find any. Ooh, let's see, we got a new one. So there was a question about, let's see, removing old downloads. So Here, let me share my screen over real quick. So one thing I will sort of say about the space that offline routes actually end up taking up, it's very, very minimal. But if you want to sort of keep things nice and tidy, if you're done using a route and you don't want it downloaded onto your phone anymore, if you head to your offline tab and you tap that three horizontal dot menu just to the right of the route in question, that will give you the option to remove download. And when you tap that, remove, that route will be removed from the downloaded tab of your mobile route library. So that will clear up whatever space we're taking up there. Okay, let's take a look at what are these other questions. So somebody asked, they normally use Strava to track their rides, and can that be running while Ride with GPS is doing its thing? So the short answer to that is yes, you can. One thing that I would sort of point out as a just a little bit of a word of caution is if you're using two GPS heavy apps at the same exact time, I've seen it happen where GPS sort of pulled back and forth between those two competing apps. So for the best experience, I would sort of stick to one app or the other. If anybody prefers to track their information on Strava, we do have a connected service with Strava that allows you to make it so that anytime you record a ride in Ride with GPS, it goes right over to Strava. I can create that little bit of, or add that little bit of information in a follow-up email so that it's handy to y'all in case anybody's interested in doing that. Let's see. Yep. I can go on a ride with GPS, click on events, and find the GWTA ride. So yeah, just as a quick recap, in terms of how to find, so the key to locating the GWTA routes is just that you need to have RSVP to the event prior to heading out into the field, right? So from the homepage of the app, you can tap that events button, and that will show you the Great Waterfront Trail Adventure listed up at the very top, which you can tap to see the routes in full view. And the other way that you can do this is by tapping more in the lower right-hand corner of the screen, going to My Events, and Waterfront Trail. Everything will be listed there. And then lastly, if you have downloaded the routes included within the Great Waterfront Trail, you can also locate those, any downloaded versions, in the offline tab of your mobile route library.
Okay.
Any other questions, concerns? Go for it.
Yes, hi, thanks. It's Marlene. My question is, if you are having a problem out on route, say you get a flat tire, can you send your location from where you are to somebody else, say the tour director?
Yeah, not within Ride with GPS. We have something called live logging, which is a paid subscription feature that basically broadcasts your current location to anybody you share your fancy little live log link with. But that uses quite a bit of battery, and I don't know that it would sort of accurately get you out of a tough situation. That said, and obviously I work for Ride with GPS, I'm very partial to Ride with GPS, but what I will say is Google Maps has that exact feature. If you open Google Maps, you can see your current location and suss out the specific Latin long coordinates, and then send that to anybody that you need to. So if you need to be rescued, knock on wood, hopefully that won't happen, but that's a great sort of alternative option to make that happen. And my last little anecdote I'll share is we all went for a big group ride as a company a couple of weeks ago. And to me, the Ride with GPS expert got very, very tired and a little lost. I had to get rescued, and I did exactly that, and it worked out pretty well.
Thank you so much, Dylan.
Yeah, no problem at all.
Yeah.
So yeah, the last thing I will say is I'm going to sort of draft up an email recapping most of the stuff that I went over here. I'll make sure that, I think David is my point of contact. I'll make sure David gets that in court and sort of send it out into the wild to anybody who needs it. But I just want to reiterate that, you'll have my email address from that email reply that you'll get. And if anyone has any questions as we sort of lead up to the event itself, please feel free to reach out to me directly. I'll be more than happy to help you and make sure that all of your questions are answered. So when the day comes, you can just focus on having a good ride and instead of thinking about where you are and all that sort of stuff.
Thank you so much. That's wonderful. I'll make 2 points. One, please do try to do things in advance. Last year, we had a few new people. They knew Ride with GPS, but they weren't used with the event function, and it really handicapped their participation in taking advantage of all the benefits associated. And I'll turn it over to David to make a comment about when is a good time to download to the offline portion the routes.
Actually, Dylan, I was just going to put that question towards you, and I believe I know the answer, but
yeah,
with regards to the offline downloads, when we are downloading it from the event, and I'm downloading it offline, and it's housed within the app. If someone downloads it today, and I make some updates to that route next week, do they get the old version or the current version of that route?
That's a great question. So when you've downloaded a route for offline use and it's sitting safely on your phone, ready for you to use it whenever you're ready, if you make subsequent edits to the original routes, those offline copies are going to be updated as well. The key here, and the sort of the most important part of this, is that in order for us to update the routes that have been downloaded for offline use, you just need connection to Wi-Fi. So for you, David, if you make any edits to any of these routes prior to the race day, I think the best thing to do would be to send out an email just letting people know, hey, I made a couple of updates here. Make sure that you sort of connect to Wi-Fi if you've downloaded any of these routes. That way we just have an opportunity to go through there and automatically update them with any changes that you've made. And again, like that process is automatic. Nobody needs to do any sort of special thinking about it. It's just nice to know that an edit was made and that they might just need to connect to Wi-Fi before heading out into the field and navigating.
Dylan, would that be the same? I'm sorry, it's Jill here. Would that be the same for somebody who has a Garmin bike GPS?
No, so that is different. Once the route leaves the Ride with GPS ecosystem and heads someplace else, it's not going to be automatically updated unless you go in there and manually do that.
Okay, so hence the notification from David to be a good idea, I think. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dylan.
Yeah, no problem. And
Dylan, I have one.
Oh, so
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Sorry,
No,
Joe.
It's Joe here. I have one last question. As you can see, we don't have a full complement of participants here. We have 140 people riding with us in a couple of weeks' time. In terms of getting the event out to our other participants who think they know everything about Ride with GPS, I'm assuming that the best thing for me to do is to send a copy of the invitation to the event through an email to those other people. There's no other way they can get on board.
Yeah, so that auto approval link that I dropped in the chat at the very beginning. If you email that out to all the participants, I'll include this in my follow-up email as well. But I have like this really helpful article. So in tandem with including the auto approval link in your email to participants, there's an article that I'll include with it that shows literally everything that you need to know as a participant, how to hit that auto approval link, how to locate the routes, how to download them, everything that they can expect is sort of outlined in there. So I think the coupling of that auto approval link and that article should give people everything that they need to know.
That is wonderful. It just suddenly occurred to me, I've got to get this auto approval link out to everybody, because just the 16 people who happen to be sitting here don't want to be those people in the privileged position.
Yeah, absolutely. And as much advance notice as you can give people so that they have an opportunity to download routes if they need to, or just prepare, always a very, very nice thing. But the crux is always getting people to read their email, to hit that auto approval link, and then to read the little bit of information you've included on how it all works.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, we have 2 more messages here.
Oh, yeah.
Nope.
Well, I was gonna say, well, Joe, while you're looking that up, just to backtrack onto the downloads again, the offline downloads, and timing. I will make sure that we can, I'll notify if there's any late changes to the routing. But I would recommend giving me until like Monday. Like just we'll start with Monday, and then like it should be all in place by then. And if there's anything else to come out after that, we'll let you know. But and the routing is pretty much set now. I'm just trying to add some of the itinerary elements. It's almost done. But I didn't want people that were taking them offline for Garmin to grab them too soon, because I knew that they might be edited. So thanks for asking, Jill. It's good to see you too, by the way.
Well, I have the one last little blurb that you'll hear from me today. Since every external GPS device works a little bit differently, in my follow-up email that I'll send, I'll include information on just a little bit of how syncing works with Garmin and Wahoo. Those are the two most popular devices, and typically that will sort of answer any lingering questions you might have about how that all works.
Awesome.
That is wonderful. So thank you so much, Dylan. That was, I learned something. And I think even anybody who's been using Ryber GPS for a while will have learned something. It's an incredible tool that helps us on our ride as we tour through Southern Ontario. So we're really grateful to you for your help. And if that's it, I think we will we'll all say goodnight, and we can go and have our dinner, and maybe those of us that are drinking a glass of wine can